through the day. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Radhika Das, for that beautiful reminder to pause, reflect, and realign. I'm sure all of us here are feeling a lot more centered this morning. Okay, on that note, from the realm of devotion and community with Kirtan singer Radhika Das, let's ground ourselves in a different kind of harmony, the symphony of finance and technology, where trust meets tech, barriers break, and possibilities unfold. In India's digital leap, lending is undergoing a revolution, making credit more accessible, faster, and trustworthy. The stage is now set for currency of lending, trust, tech, transactions. Let's dive into how India's lending landscape is getting a tech makeover and becoming more inclusive. Please welcome Kamlesh Chandra Vashni, whole-time member SEBI, Mr. Hemant Gala, CEO of PhonePe Lending, Mr. Ashok Hariharan, CEO of ID5, and Mr. Aditya B. Chatterjee, MD, Equifax India. In conversation with Chandra R. Srikant. Thank you, gentlemen. Can we have a huge round of applause, please? Chandra, the stage is yours.
Thank you for that. From the spiritual realm to the financial realm. Thank you very much for joining us on Rising Bharat. And I think I want to start with an anecdote that Emmanuel Macron shared last week at the AI Impact Summit, where he said in 2014, a tea seller in Mumbai did not have a bank account, did not have access to credit. But in just 10 years, because of the UPI revolution, he's now able to just use a scanner and accept payments. So he called it a transformational moment for India, something that no other country has been able to do in terms of giving a digital identity to 1.4 billion people. So I guess that's the biggest win as far as Rising Bharat is concerned. But with every technological advancement also come attached risks. So while we've seen rapid strides in digital payments, digital credit, we've also seen instances of digital arrests, cyber frauds, especially for people over 60, over 70, senior citizens, hard-earned savings being lost this way. So today we will discuss how far we have come, but also what we should prepare for going forward, and we have the perfect blend for that. We have a regulator view, a lender view, a credit view, and the risk view. So, you know, a very good mix of all four. But let's start with the regulator view. You know, we are talking about Rising Bharat, sir, and I just want to ask you, SEBI has been talking a lot about leveraging technology, leveraging AI for investor protection, for user protection. But what really separates what we are doing in India, how we are able to do this better than other countries? Because the scale is so huge, the scope is so huge. I'm sure the amount of complaints that you have to deal with are exponentially higher than what other countries face. So take us through that.
Yeah, thank you, Chandra. And really a very entertaining and session we had just before this one. Talking about what we are doing at SEBI. So SEBI regulate capital market, and we can proudly say that there are some initiative which we have taken to protect investor interest, to develop market, to deepen market integrity, which no other country has done. And after we have done that, other countries are taking steps. So this is exactly what Prime Minister was referring yesterday, Rising Bharat, something that we are doing on our own. So I will just give three examples. There are more examples, but just to touch three examples. The first one relates to how we do settlement, trading and everything. So we were the first country to have T+1 settlement. And, you know, it is only after us, US came out with T+1 settlement. And by that time, we were experimenting with T+0 settlement, which means faster settlement. You sell your stock today, you will get money tomorrow or the other way around. You pay money today, you will get your stock tomorrow, which brings lot of efficiency in the market, reduces chances for manipulations. So this is one thing, and not only that, in the case of settlement, there was one case which we had many years ago, when brokers who was handling client securities pledged that security with banks, and then that broker went bankrupt. Now, who will lose the security? You know, banks will say, I want to encash this security. If you and bank encashes that security, the investor lose their security without their fault. So that case is still going on in Supreme Court. You know, SAT has given a verdict, but somebody has to lose. So, but that's not ideal for the market. So you must have sufficient system in place that nobody loses. And therefore, SEBI came out using technology with a system where there is a system of pledging, repledging, but security remains in customer account. Even when customer sells the security, we have come out with a system where is upstreaming of fund and direct payout of securities, where the fund and securities go directly to the client's account and not through broker's account. This kind of system is nowhere in the world. You know, we are the first one to do it so that the fraud doesn't take place. We have a unique system where clearing corporation has full visibility of the client level visibility, not broker level visibility. All other countries only know brokers level visibility. That means broker can use one client fund against another client's obligations. This cannot happen in India. So once again, this prevents fraud. So we can proudly say the way our stock market works, settlement, margining system, pledging, repledging is unique in the world, and many countries came us, we showed it to them and they were hugely impressed and they want to implement that system in their country. So that is one part. My second part is on assured return. You know, we allow mutual fund because their NAV is very transparent, so they publish their performance of their various schemes in a very transparent manner. But if there is an algo provider, if there is an investment analyst, research analyst, they cannot publish their result because they can pick and choose whatever advice they are giving. If their advice has worked, they will say, I will only show that advice. If that advice did not work, they will not show that advice. But therefore, we prevented them from publishing their result. So they came out to us that how can you prevent us? How will I win my clients? So once again, using technology, we have come out with a system which is unique in the world. No other country has this system. What we have a Parva, NSE and CARE together have developed a system which is right now on trial basis. More than 25 people have already registered in that system. So in that system, algo provider or IARA, they come on board right from the beginning. So whatever is their advice, performance, gets monitored on real-time basis, and then after a period of 3 months or 6 months, a result is published, whether their advice did well or did not do well, or how much return it gave, or algorithm, how much return it generated. You know, so that is a transparent way of publishing your result. That pilot project will get over in March or April. And from May or June, we will actually have a full-fledged system, which I can proudly say is nowhere else in the world. The third point which you raised about cyber fraud, that digital arrest, different kind of fraud takes place in security market, where you will get a fake app, fake payment link. So lot of people have lost money, and it is not uneducated people. Many of people who are well educated and professional like you, doctors, engineers, chartered accountants, you know, they all highly placed professionals, retired people have lost crores of rupees because they think that app is genuine. It is Zerodha app or it is Grow app, but it is a fake app. So they put their money over there through a payment link, which is not a verified payment link, and they lose money immediately because the money goes to the scamster. What they show you in fake app is completely fake system, and you think your money is going up. When you want to withdraw, then they disappear. Lot of people have lost crores of rupees in this. So what SEBI has come out using technology is a SEBI check. So this SEBI check can be, there is a link which can be through an app. So we have a app also, Sarthi 2.0, investors can download, or if they don't want to download the app, there is a link on our website. You use that link and you scan the QR code of the payment link. It will show you it is a genuine or a fake one. Genuine means only from security market perspective. So, and that, or there is another system there that you can enter bank account number and IFSC number in that SEBI check. If this bank account is of a market intermediary, capital market intermediary, then it will say, yes, you can make the payment. It is verified. So that way, through SEBI check, you can actually know, particularly if you are making a big payment to somebody, that whether your money is going to the right person. So that SEBI check has initiative we are popularizing through advertisement. We are going to all colleges, universities, telling students, actually demonstrating that SEBI check to them. Yesterday also I was in quite a big university, thousands of students. We demonstrated how this SEBI check is to be used. Because this is one thing we feel that, once again, this is not anywhere else. We have also done very important step, which is right now only with Google Play Store, not with Apple Play Store, is if you open your Android phone, Play Store, and you type any, want to download any capital market, security market intermediaries, let's say Groww, Zerodha, Motilal, anybody's app, it will show verified. Now that verified tick is available only on those apps which have been verified by SEBI.
Right.
So that is a very important step which has been taken. We are very thankful to Google who has helped us in doing this. We are still negotiating with Apple because we want to tell them one simple thing. In this digital world, there is a good use of technology and bad use of technology. It is important that all these people who are using technology for good should come together and pool their resources. That is how we convinced Google. Apple, we still have to work with them, but hopefully they will also come and this will be...
It's good that you convinced Google, because I think 95% of India is on Android.
Yeah.
So Apple should come through hopefully soon as well. But, just out of curiosity, through a show of hands, how many of you know people who have been victims of digital arrests? Okay, that's not a high number, but I think, I don't know, I think I have at least come across many people, even doctors who have lost 15 lakhs, which is absolutely stunning.
Even crores.
Okay, my friend lost 15 lakhs, but yes, there have been people who've lost crores. How many of you have been subject to fake links or phishing links, like he said, fake payment links?
Yeah, a lot of.
Okay, but I think you've listed out some interesting steps, especially the verified one on Play Store is a good step, and the others as well. So hopefully people will become more aware of this.
And Google told us that we have done it first time in India, now we are going to roll out in other countries.
Great, so that's setting the benchmark for other countries. But moving on from the market side to the lending side, Hemant, and what separates PhonePe from others is, first of all, the scale of your platform. You have a dominant position when it comes to payments, but you're also a two-sided network with a consumer play, a merchant play, and there have been so many technological advances in the last 10 years that's also changed the way credit is done in India. You have flow-based lending now, which is taking off based on credit history of any small vendor. How has that changed things for you? The fact that you have your QR codes in so many different PIN codes across India, right from a Pani Puri vendor to a general merchant to a general store. How has that worked for you?
So I think it's worked wonderfully well. So going with the theme Rising Bharat, right? One critical element of Rising Bharat is the credit to GDP ratio. credit has to be something which is sustainable, which is compliant, but which is something which lays the foundation of the economic growth of the country. If you look at credit to GDP ratio for a country like India, it's right now at around 90%. China would be at around 120, 130%. The evolved economies would be at about 180, 190%. But within that, if you break this up, the credit to GDP ratio for the retail consumer segment is at 25%. Even below, the MSME segment is at 19%. But within that, the micro merchants. So today, where large amount of payment digitization has happened is with the micro merchants. And in the MSME space, micro merchants contribute to almost 95% in terms of count. There, the credit to GDP ratio is just 4%. So there's been a big gap in the entire credit adoption if you go across segments. And if we see what has happened in last 10 years, if I broadly divided in phases, I would say from 2015 to 2020 was the entire digitization phase, which led to a trust being built. Like sir was saying, the T+1 settlement, the flow of money, the fact that my money will come, the fact that if I make payment, it will get paid, the fact that I've given mandate, the entire trust got built on the digitization journey that we created. The entire ecosystem which jointly created on UPI, on GST, and a lot more other things. The second phase was around, the data and the formalization phase, which meant that people who were not in the formal digital ecosystem or who couldn't understand, the ecosystem couldn't understand their credit standing and all. That formalization phase has come in, which has led to data, understanding of structured data formats to be able to, figure out what is the credit standing, how to lend and how to give money to people. And with such growth and this thing comes rightfully the regulatory intervention because it brings in the right structures. RBI has played a fantastic role in bringing out digital lending guidelines, which has helped look at it in a very structured way. It has helped looking at ensuring the money goes in the customer's bank account. There's key fact statements. The privacy elements have got taken care of. Given this context, right, the digitization, the formalization and the regulatory intervention is now poised for a fantastic growth because when we see our two-sided networks, India is, while we are in tier 1 city, but India, I would say, there's India and then there's Bharat 1, Bharat 2, Bharat 3, and which is...
This is like how VCs like to divide it, like yes. India 1, India 2, India 3.
And in there, the micro merchant segment, which is essentially was on the fringe of the financial inclusion, never saw, intense amount of ability to access credit. And that is what we are trying to unlock because with the QRs being there's an understanding of the business that the merchant is doing, there's understanding of the credit standing and the digital payments have played a supporting role because, for example, what we do today is in terms of lending to small merchants through our partners is a daily repayment. A small kirana store, a small corner store doesn't have needs. So there is a concept of survival credit and growth credit. So medium and small enterprises would need growth credit, but 95% of MSME is survival credit, which means they need money to be able to run their business the next day or the next month or to be able to sustain festive period. So that is what we have led, unlocked because with the flow-based lending, with the digital payments, which means there's mandates, UPI-based mandates where there is daily repayments, with the bureau guardrails improving, with the regulatory intervention coming in, which means that instead of a 45-day update or 30-day, it is now a weekly cycle with which, there is updates on the bureau. Customers have been able to understand what a credit score really means, why it is important. So there is element of, even in a tier 3, 4, 5 cities where the merchants or consumers who are taking loan realize that my credit score has to be good. That means I have to pay. And there is an issue resolution mechanism which has been put in place within 30 days. So there is so much of work that is happening that I think we are rightly poised. And that is what we are leveraging at PhonePe in a very sustainable way where, ensuring that customers, not just in tier 1, but 3, 4, 5 cities, towns, villages get access to credit. Likewise, merchants who were not being able to, in a very formal way, access credit, have a sustainable flow of credit because of the transactions, because of digitization, because of GST and account aggregator, which gives a way better view of the merchants to us now.
Right. Aditya, if I can just come to you, and this is a two-part question. One segment of credit that was very buzzy a couple of years ago, till RBI came out with its digital lending guidelines, was the whole BNPL segment. What have we learned from that experience in terms of how credit is being underwritten for that segment? By BNPL, I mean the buy now, pay later loans that all of us would have seen on various apps. And secondly, we also talk about a thin credit file So how can, transactions alone help us understand such customers better in terms of repayment guarantees? Hemant touched upon some parts of it, but if you can tell us.
Sure, thanks. So coming to the first part, the BNPL or the low ticket PL, right? That was a rage, say, for 3-4 years. For the right reasons, RBI did come very strongly on it last 18 months, and these have become a lot more controlled now. And as a bureau, we feel that this is the right step because it has a direct effect on delinquency. We had seen that these low ticket loans, and when I say low ticket, let's take say 50,000, 0 to 50,000 as the bracket. In these low ticket loans, the delinquencies, which is 30 plus, you haven't paid more than 30 days, goes as high as 26%, which is an immensely high delinquency. Good delinquencies are 2 to 3%. So this used to go up to 26%. So this had a very vicious cycle because what lenders started doing is they started pricing in the delinquency. So the interest rates would also go up to say 40, 50%, which should be up to 10, 11%. The good news is that we see that stopped now. Right? Everybody has become very cautious in terms of this segment. The growth, the standard growth that we see in the low ticket PL or BNPL, that segment is around 15 to 20%, which was trending 40, 50% 2 to 3 years back. All the lenders have become very cautious not to breach the 15, 20% growth level. They have become very cautious on the ticket size. We have seen that there is a direct effect of the ticket size and delinquency. Again, 0 to 50,000 has a very high delinquency. But if we go to a loan above 1 lakh or 2 lakh, it becomes very secure, right? So there's a direct effect of the ticket size. So right now we see that the low ticket or the BNPL is much more controlled, and thanks to the RBI and thanks to the lenders for making that happen. Coming to the second part of your question, so there are 3 parts to a credit journey, right? One is NTC, new to credit. There the lenders look at various other parameters like maybe your telco usage, your utility usage, your cohort in the bureau. So that is the new to credit. In India, just to give you a number, we have about 300 to 350 million bureau active, which is obviously one of the largest in the world. A UK would be 30 million, so we'll be about 10x the size of any other developed country. But a thin file comes after new to credit, which is, again, a rule of thumb is that bureau presence of just 6 months or you just have one small loan. The good part of a thin file is that it starts the credit journey, right? And there are also ways to underwrite thin files. Things like gold loan, two-wheeler, MFI are the ones where the thin file becomes the most. So that is also very closely tracked. And lastly, I'll come to one last point, as Hemant spoke about the micro. I think to make India credit-worthy, the micro, which is 95% in size, but only 4% in terms of the volume of the loans have to grow. The second thing we all have to grow is the MFI, which is the microfinance. Microfinance is an average household income of 3 lakhs per year, so absolute bottom of the pyramid. And there is about more than 8 crore bureau presence of MFI customers. And I think that's a very good sign as well for credit inclusion.
Wow, that's an amazing statistic. 95% in terms of size, but only 4% in terms of credit, the micro market. So you actually have a very large market to go after, Hemant. But Ashok, IDFI plays a very important role in the whole digital KYC, background verification space. And I want to understand, is AI helping you or harming you? Because it's become significantly easier to create fake profiles which look extremely original. So has it made your work tougher or easier?
So I think fraud keeps me up all night, right? And in terms of scams, just a broad number.
And it gets more and more
Yeah.
inventive, right?
Right, and
If you've seen Jamtara.
Yeah, and I'm the one guy who's looking forward to fraud, right? Everybody else is like, hey, you know, we need fraud to
These
stop. I'm
guys
like,
will not be so happy about that.
I'm like, yeah, if fraud goes up, my business goes up, right? Probably I'm the only guy who's excited about it. But anyway, but
The
if it-
SEBI person is not too happy.
we lost about 34,000 crores approximately to scams last year, reported. Unreported, unofficial estimates is probably
34,000 crores.
That's right.
That's
reported.
insane. Okay.
That is cybercrime reported, RBI reported, you know, all regulators reported put together is about 34,000 crores. More than likely because unreported, that is, most people don't come and report. The likely number is probably about 80 or 1,000 crores, which is a $10 billion fraud market, right? This was about just a couple of years back, reported used to be, I mean, not a couple of years, 5 years back, reported used to be about 3,000, 4,000 crores. I think you would also remember that those days, it's gone up 10x, right? So the fraud
That's why
scams have
you
gone...
seem very happy. It's gone up 10.
I'm very happy.
Yeah, okay.
Fraud, scams, money lost to scams has gone up faster than Elon Musk's net worth. Right? So in that context, to your question, we are seeing a lot more AI originated fraud. That is, you know, what's one of the things with digitization is that once you remove the person from physical contact, it's easier to commit fraud in some sense, right? Because you can kind of run engines on top of that and you're not meeting the person. So he can actually, if he gets through a hole, he can attack that 100 times. Earlier, he could probably attack that only once. That's an unfortunate sort of side effect of fraud. And obviously, fraudsters use all kinds of tools, and they are usually one or two steps ahead of us. So we kind of plug a hole and then they figure out another one. But today, in terms of deepfakes, we are able to catch that. In fact, PhonePe is one of our customers in that end. We can catch deepfakes today. Pretty much, if you use the ID5 platform, or for that matter, a lot of my competition platform, that's a plugged hole. Where we are not able to plug is see, on the digital KYC side, I think we have pretty good technology to solve for that. On the physical side, there's still a lot of loopholes. Right? Because you're physically carrying documents. Only about 20%, between maybe PhonePe might be in the higher end of that spectrum, but most banks, only about 20% of the journeys are digitized, which means what happens in the physical side? How are you getting your SIM cards, for example? These are your holes that need to be plugged, and there has to be a common layer, in my opinion, across all regulated entities to follow a standard model for catching KYC fraudsters, largely because if they once they enter the system, they can do a lot of havoc, right? I don't think there's unified KYC norms across regulators, unfortunately, today.
No, there's CKYC, KI is there.
Yeah, but you know, if you look at the submission norms for, like, for example, telecom, TRAI is different from RBI.
No, that's right. But I think that is now going to be harmonized.
That's what
there are two stages of KYC. First stage only asks you identity and address, and the second stage asks you customer due diligence. So customer due diligence will differ from a service entity. That will differ.
And that's my point.
Yeah.
Is that if your norms on the banking norms is higher than telecom, right, and the telecom guys are allowing people through, then you have a SIM card with a number. You can do anything today, and then open a bank account right after, because you'll rely on a CKYC submission, which the telcos did, which is a weaker submission in general. Then your whole system is actually, you know, is broken to some extent.
Right. Last 3 minutes. So I'm just going to ask each of you, what is the one thing that you do to ensure that you're safe digitally, or, you know, what's the one or two checks that you do? I think Mr. Bashni started with a couple of things that SEBI has done, but Hemant, as someone who, you know, is, I would say, very tech savvy, part of a large digital platform, what's the one or two things, tips or tricks that you would like to share with this audience?
I mean, this is an ever-catching, game, and you need to be, I think, the awareness, right, being on top of, just being aware of what is happening. For us, at the company level at PhonePe, it's our DNA. I mean, fraud is something which we've been working with for last 10 years across with everyone in the ecosystem, with NPCI, banks, with government, continuously relying and trying to, understand what the fraud patterns are and just be on the top of it. So that's why we've been able to proactively, the fact that, UPI is a silver device SIM-binded protocol, which ensures that you still have, fair amount of guardrails built in there. But FRA fraud risk is a continuous journey, which we attempt to be on top of it. I think creating awareness and just being aware. I mean, a lot of times it is just about, that small incentive that comes your way saying, that bait comes your way, or there's a fear mongering which gets created. You just need to be, friends, family, be aware of it. Don't play into the fear and don't play into the incentive.
It probably isn't.
Sorry?
If something is too good to be true,
Yes.
it's probably
so incentive
not.
and fear mongering are the two things which, just play out on human, psychology, which, we need to be just continuously be on top of.
Right. Aditya, quickly your thoughts.
Thanks. So, as a bureau, bureau is mostly a custodian of data. We don't generate data, or we cannot, in fact, have any, modifications done to the data. But what we take care of is that the interaction that we do for a credit report is purely based on consent. That's very important for our business. That is very important from the regulator. So whatever journey that you have from a credit perspective, that has to follow a very, very strong consent mechanism. There are many built-in checks within the consent mechanism. For example, there is no perennial kind of consent. Every 6 months, a fresh consent has to be taken. So that is the guardrail that we work on very strongly.
Ashok?
What's the question?
What are the one or two tips or tricks that you would like to share?
Yeah,
As someone who sees these frauds.
Yeah, I think I don't pick up phones numbers which I don't recognize.
But what if it's a reporter who doesn't know you?
I don't pick it up somewhere. Yes, they have to get through someone else. But essentially, I mean, don't, I'll give an example, maybe just
Quickly,
a short anecdote. My father-in-law passed away about 2 years ago. Just the day after, my wife got a call. And the call, basically, the guy said, बेटा आपके पापा ने मेरे पास कुछ 50,000 छोड़ के गए हैं, आपको ट्रांसफर करना है मेरे को वापस, give me your account number. My wife, in that emotional turmoil, gave the account number to transfer. The SMS came in. It sounded like HDFC, but the number was not an HDFC number. Fortunately, she's married to me, and I keep talking about fraud, so she didn't. And then right after the call came back again, बेटा गलती से मैंने कुछ 75,000 ट्रांसफर कर दिया, आप वापस मेरे को 25,000 ट्रांसफर कर दीजिए. Now the problem here is, how did he know that the father passed away? Who leaked that data? It's either my security guard, the hospital, the government, that's wherever we got the death certificate from, the ambulance, or the hospital, right? Now, if that data is leaked, what are they doing? They are attacking you at the most emotionally distraught state, because you're not going to be thinking normally. So when you're making transfers, one of the first things to think about is just step back, think through whether this sounds right. It's not just about greed. Like, there are 3-4 things. One is greed, other one is emotional turmoil, other one is stupidity. These are the 3 reasons that fraudsters use, right? So
we're out of time, sir, but final word to you. Anything that you would like to say in 10-15 seconds on how people should be more aware and vigilant?
No, I think from SEBI perspective, probably technology, I have already touched upon what steps we are taking and we will continue to take. But the special emphasis is right now on investor education. And we are, all our market intermediaries, infrastructure institutions, SEBI, we are reaching out to all villages, through panchayat, to students and all, and creating this awareness about the kind of frauds which are taking place and what is the right way of investing. So hopefully, with that kind of educational initiative that we are taking, there would be some change.
Great. On that note, this has been a very informative, enlightening panel. Thank you very much. A huge round of applause for our speakers.